What's up, guys? Noah from Stage 3 Motorsports here, and today I'm joined by Scott from Icon. And we wanted to jump in today, basically talk through some Raptor suspension options, what you guys offer, and kind of Gen 1 and Gen 2. There's similarities and some differences in there, but we can start off probably talking Gen 1. What's the guy looking at with your guys' kits? What does that change, and how is that going to be a little bit better than what comes on that truck from factory?
Yeah, so basically the Gen 1 was kind of a game changer as far as the platform goes to start with. And so all that extra wheel travel, the track width, we had a lot to work with. And so the basic shock setup they come with would be a 2.5-inch internal bypass setup, which basically means your working piston inside is not a 2.5-inch diameter piston. It's actually smaller because you have the different chambers inside the shock to allow that internal bypass function. So what we wanted to do was offer a bigger shock with a larger working piston. So we went with a full 3.0 outer diameter shock with a larger piston. So basically from the technical side of things, the larger pistons allow for more force to be generated so they can do more work. We took it a step further. We wanted more bottom out control. So it actually has two pistons in there. The main piston, and then there's a small riser and a smaller 2-inch diameter, we call it the bump piston, that basically at full compression locates into a cup in the very top cap of the shock there to allow for more bottom out control. Effectively breaks the shock up into multiple zones without it being a true bypass shock. So you can, it gets progressively firmer as it goes through those zones as well. And basically the performance and the travel that adds is a night and day over the stock setup. And then we include the CDC valve as well, so you can tune it to your liking, but will pretty much allow you to drive the front end of that truck over whatever you would like, and it will take it for the most part. So it's a big jump over the stock setup on the truck for sure.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things you can tell even just comparing when you pull a factory Fox coilover out of that truck and then put it next to the Icon 3.0, just how much bigger it is and how much more dialed in that system is. But another thing is with these Gen 1 Raptors, a lot of you guys that own them obviously have some mileage on them now. These trucks are getting a little bit older, and so a lot of that factory suspension is already wore out, which is the perfect time to jump in and get into a system like that where you can improve performance and get rid of worn out equipment.
Exactly. Their shocks are serviceable just like ours would be, so that if you're already going to go through that hassle of taking that off and having it redone, this is a perfect opportunity to go ahead and upgrade and really get the truck to work as well as it was designed to do without having the inherent limitations of the stock setup. And we do a bunch of other products that really help that besides just the coilovers and the rear shocks. We do like some external bypass stuff that's really neat as well, that allows a lot of adjustability across the board.
Yeah. Now, I know talking in terms of the rear end of the vehicle, you guys have some leaf spring setups and some other things to kind of dial that in. What's going on in the back?
Basically, we offer two different configurations. We have a stock replacement rear shock, stock replacement, same 3-inch diameter, but it's a 3-tube external bypass. So you can adjust those different zones. Unlike the factory setup with the internal, those cannot be adjusted in any way. Then we take it a step further with our RXT system, which would include that multi-rate leaf spring that you mentioned, and then a longer, very trick version of that shock as well that we refer to as the RXT shock. You may notice it's got the eyelet, which is traditionally on top. It's on the side of the body. The deal behind that is so we can fit a physically longer shock in the same factory mounting points that would otherwise fit.
Without having to cut into the bed or add new mounts to it. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so that is when you pair the shock with the leaf springs, it's a 50% travel gain in the rear, which is huge. It's quite a bit more capable, because that was, after you get the front end set up, the rear, you really see how limiting that is. And so that makes a huge difference. We offer a bolt-on hydraulic bump stop system that, again, similar concept to the front, allows for extra bottom out control. But a lot of these Gen 1s, they're kind of infamous for bending frames and stuff if you're really driving them.
Getting a little too aggressive, yeah.
Exactly. It's just kind of one of the things of that platform. So we took it, and when we were making our bump system, we wanted to kind of address that as well. So not only are we improving the suspension performance, we use a clamshell design that wraps around the frame, and then we have the crossbar, which is common amongst all the bump stop kits of that sort of design. But you'll notice we also have some torsion bars in there that go up that are adjustable, so you can basically preload your frame, and that eliminates any of the flex that is common on those bump stop kits, because by moving those bump stops farther outboard, we're leveraging the frame that much harder. So without that, you're really putting a lot more stress onto it, and that effectively also solves that bending issue that they're known for too. Nice. So it's a big improvement. That's not a requirement for any of that travel or anything like that, but it's definitely if you're driving it to that manner, it's kind of important just to avoid issues as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the guys that are running these trucks long term and still like to go hit the desert, that's something to consider if they want that longevity in the vehicle. So it's good that you guys address that.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to make the truck work as long as it can, basically.
Absolutely.
That's effectively the whole rear end system. You can pair the bolt-in rear shock with the multi-rate leaf spring as well. They just won't have that travel gain, but you'll have the advantage of being able to customize your spring rate and ride height for what kind of load you have in the bed.
Now, you mentioned ride height briefly. That's one of those things that people do ask about is, what kind of lift am I getting on a Raptor like this with one of your guys' systems? So what can a customer see, and is that adjustable to get a certain ride height?
It is adjustable for up to 3 inches of lift. And so then the rear, with that multi-rate, it is not adjustable in a sense, but it can be reconfigured. It's a couple hours worth of labor to basically break that spring apart and set it back up and with the different rates, but it's something that's totally manageable in a single day. And so you can change your setup based off of whatever your upgrade you've just added onto the truck, because this thing is it's snowball effect. They just keep going, and the build is never really done.
Exactly. There's always something to change and improve on.
Exactly.
That's the truth.
Also, regarding the front end, we also have our billet aluminum upper control arms. We mentioned in one of our other videos available with our Delta joint, and those are on vehicle adjustable, just like everything else. And that doesn't give you any extra travel like you see on some, but it makes a big difference in the strength of the upper arm and the alignment adjustment as well. What a lot of guys do on the Raptors too is they'll actually use a lockout on the lower control arm, so that eliminates the cam system, and then you can run that adjustable upper and really have all control of your alignment still without having to deal with the kind of constant issue of knocking that lower arm out of alignment when you're taking it wheeling.
Yeah, it gives you something that's going to handle running it like you should be running it.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I do want to throw in for those of you watching, we do actually have some other videos that we've done with Scott here from Icon where we talk about the adjustability of the CDC systems and what that actually means. So if you are looking for some more details on that, definitely check that video out. We're also going to have a review on our Raptor here with Icon system on it, where we're out wheeling it and actually driving this thing. So that'll give you guys maybe some more depth into what it's like to run the truck with that kit on there. But with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the Gen 2 Raptors and what your guys' system looks like on that vehicle.
Okay. I mean, basically out of the box, the Gen 2 was another leap and bound improvement over the Gen 1.
Yeah.
And so when our engineers were addressing that, we realized that the enormous jump in performance wasn't going to happen in the same way like you had from the Gen 1. So the product line, however, is very similar in its offerings. The front coilover looks a little bit different just due to the packaging requirements and to get it all in there, but the same two-piston design, same 3-inch diameter shock with the internal bump zone, same CDC valve. The rear setup uses a very similar multi-rate leaf spring, just like to the Gen 1.
Okay.
But one kind of key difference is that we don't have a differentiation between our bolt-in rear shock and our RXT rear shock.
Okay.
Basically the Gen 2 rear off the shelf is the RXT design, and that was to try to squeeze as much travel out of the factory setup because there was a little bit more to be had, but we don't think we're going to have a huge gain from anything else. So we wanted to maximize what we get up from the get-go. So you're already getting an RXT system right off the bat with that. So it's a pretty good travel gain in the rear. Same bump stop system, even though the Gen 2s, they seem to be better about that bending of the frame issue.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but we included that as well, so that it just eliminates all that. My feedback from the Gen 2 that I've heard from most guys is the leaf spring itself, even if the travel and all that stuff, even if you don't want to change out the shocks, that's the biggest as far as bang for your buck sort of improvement on the Gen 2 seems to be. And my thoughts, they have a lot of axle wrap. Under a hard pull, you can definitely feel that axle kind of hop and vibrate in the driveline and stuff.
They make good power. They don't seem to have any trouble twisting that.
Exactly. So we designed that multi-rate leaf spring with that in mind. So it has a special, the leaves are stacked in such a way to combat the axle wrap. So it eliminates the factory block as well. So you'll notice right off the bat that it just feels much better in the rear end, even if you keep the factory shock setup. We do have more coming for the Gen 2 in terms of add-on products and stuff, hopefully in the not too distant future, but we'll see exactly where that goes, especially with the new electronic shocks coming. There's a whole, I guess they're not coming, they are definitely already here. So we are experimenting with a lot of different stuff for that. With the 19 models, If you, our systems are fully compatible,
Okay.
but we do offer a module that you would install onto the computer system to basically disable the live valve technology from that to allow it to change that shock out without upsetting the computer.
Sure.
If you just disconnect it, the computer doesn't get very happy, and so the truck basically goes into limp mode and you can't really drive it. So
Okay.
that would get around that.
Yeah, very convenient fix to keep the truck drivable. for
Exactly.
Sure.
All the other drive modes and everything functions normally, just you wouldn't have that system working in the shocks. But honestly, we're working on something cool, so hopefully in the near future we'll have some iteration of that.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing it. So Scott, talking in terms, we mentioned the CDC valve stuff that happens on the front shocks, but in the back, you guys have a little bit of a different system going on for both Gen 1 and Gen 2 there. Can you kind of explain how that works or what the adjustments are doing back there?
Sure. It's a external bypass instead of an internal bypass. And the advantage that has is that you can adjust each zone independently without disassembling the shock.
Okay.
You can just get out, turn the knob really quick, and you see the immediate change. What makes us quite a bit different is the method in which that adjusts. Traditionally, you need tools like a little wrench, an Allen wrench, and you have to be very specific with your adjustment because there's no way of really knowing how it's set.
Sure.
So to kind of simplify it and make it more non-race car driver friendly, it's all done by hand. Just a knob with detents at every quarter turn interval. So totally there are 28 settings of adjustment per valve. And on these Raptor shocks, we have 2 compression tubes and 1 rebound tube, and that effectively splits it up into 3 zones within the shock. And depending on how you adjust each of those valves, you have a extremely wide range of adjustment to do whatever you like. If anything from a super soft, compliant ride for street driving or really aggressive for high-speed off-road, it'll get you going. And both of those, either the bolt-in or the RXT, for either platform works in the same way. So a lot of guys seem, like you mentioned earlier, like, hey, that's an awful lot. I don't really want to mess with that, but we encourage it. And the instructions will have some basic tuning guides in them. So like, hey, this is what we recommend for towing or, high-speed off-road or, street use, all these sort of things. And so you have a baseline to kind of go off of, and then you can play with it and really see what results you get by doing different things. And
what really works for you and how you use your vehicle.
Exactly. And just like the CDC valve, there's more to it, but the more you use it and play with it, essentially, you really can learn about a lot how it works without having to be an expert.
Awesome. And for the guy that is getting that out of the box, so you guys have it already sort of preset to where if he doesn't adjust it, it's going to work well as kind of an average use setup. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. The instructions is part of that little general tuning guide. It has like a just general use setting, and that's how they're set up out of the box. So you don't have to worry about it. We do. You just bolt it on, go, see how it does, and you can just go from there. Or if you never want to, that's cool too. The shock is very capable in its standard setting. There's just any number of different reasons why you would want to change that.
Awesome.
Another thing too, in addition to the performance of it, is the design of the valve is internally damped for noise. A lot of different brands of bypass valves are traditionally they make a racket in the operation. And that's fine, they're working, and on a race car, that's all fine and well.
Yeah,
but
they don't care about the sound.
Exactly. Yeah, but when you're driving around town, having to hear the clack, clack, clack of bypass valves, it can be rather annoying. So the valve is damped internally, so it's basically silent in operation, in addition to all that performance and hand adjustment.
Yeah, that definitely gives it a little bit more daily drivability and makes it feel a little less like a race truck.
Exactly.
You still get the good performance, but it's tolerable.
Right.
One last note I had for you on the Gen 2 stuff. It looks like it all has finned reservoirs on it. Is that an upgrade or is that standard?
Currently, that is standard on that. It's the only platform that we use with the fin reservoirs from our factory.
Okay.
For all the other platforms, at least for the time being, we're offering that as a retrofit or an upgrade installed at your favorite dealer or shock servicer. But for the Gen 2, we really wanted to give it that extra pizzazz and include those from the get-go.
So guys, this is going to be a wrap on our Raptor suspension overview. Scott, thank you for coming in and walking us through all the details on that and kind of taking away some of the mystery behind the kits and how they actually work. It's really good info to have, and I know a lot of us are eager to see what you guys come up with in the future. So if you guys are interested in picking up some of this Raptor suspension for your truck, you can head down the description below, click those links. It's going to shoot you over to our website. And as I said before, make sure you check out the other videos that we made with Scott here, talking about Icon and some of the stuff they do and their R&D and development and all the process that happens to make the suspension that they make. And we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Not a problem.